Hey, what's up guys? I'm going to show you guys all the possible ways of connecting the ASUS ET8 Mesh WiFi 6E system. I've done another review video on this where I go over the speed test and range test and the app and a whole bunch of other stuff. So I'll put a link in the description below if you guys are interested in seeing how capable this thing is. And honestly, this thing is a pretty good system, especially for the price. So in this video, we're going to concentrate on all the connections. So I have my modem, I have the ET8, I have unmanaged switches, and I have a whole bunch of Ethernet cables. So starting off with our modem, so this is the guy that's giving you internet access. If you have a modem router combo, I personally recommend disabling the router portion of it by either putting it in bridge mode, unless there's a specific disable button there. But essentially the way you would typically, I mean, there's so many variants, I don't want to get into any specifics here for the modem, but typically it's usually a web address, like an IP address or something here that you go to on your browser, and then it gives you some setting options. But you can just call your ISP and they'll usually tell you how to disable it. If you don't want to disable it, then you would need to run the ET8 in access point mode, which I don't recommend. So you can do that, it would technically work, but I personally just like running this as my main router, my main mesh Wi-Fi setup. All right, so this is the guy that's giving you internet access. So it comes out from this Ethernet port, and this is a cable modem, so it's hooked up to the coax and power. But you can also, if you have a fiber optic modem, so an ONT, or if you have a DSL, essentially they all kind of work differently, but I mean, they all give you access to the internet. So at the end of the day, they're pretty much doing the same thing. So in this, you could pretty much, whatever I say with this modem, you could switch it with your ONT or your DSL. It all applies to that. So just as a heads up. Okay, so we have the ASUS ET8 and we have the unmanaged switches. So what a switch does is it literally just expands your Ethernet ports. So in the case of the ET8, you know, we have a few ports on each. And if you have more Ethernet devices, well, you can just use switches to expand them, and these are both unmanaged switches, which are typically cheaper. There are managed switches, but most people don't really need managed switches. Managed switches are typically aimed towards businesses that they need to, you know, do a whole bunch more customizations, make some VLANs, and anyways, I don't want to get into too much into managed switches, but typically for most homes, an unmanaged switch is fine, and they're also cheaper. And I also have a whole bunch of Ethernet cables here. So in my case, I try to get Cat 6 or Cat 7 cables most of the time, but even Cat 5e supports gigabit. However, Cat 6 and Cat 7 can go up to 10 gigabit. So it really just depends how fast you want your network to be. But I've been trying to use Cat 7 lately, and that's because one of my unmanaged switches is actually a 10 gigabit unmanaged switch, so I actually need that to handle those speeds. Okay, so starting off with option number 1. So I'm going to use the same option numbering scheme as I've done for all my other Wi-Fi videos, just so it makes sense. Okay, so option number 1 is when you have a single router configuration. So just because you get a 2-pack or a 3-pack or more, you technically could just use one of them, because really this is a router. So in this case, you would hook up your modem to the WAN port. In this case, it's the blue one. But WAN stands for Wide Area Network and LAN stands for Local Area Network. So you want to hook it up to your WAN port, and the router will pretty much read all the information it needs, get the IP address, DNS, all that other stuff, and be able to provide internet access to anything that connects to it. So in this case, you're pretty much done. So if you only need to connect 3 other devices, well, you have 3 Ethernet ports, and you can connect a whole bunch of Wi-Fi devices. So like your phone or something, you want to connect it to this, just connect to the Wi-Fi. Inside the app or inside the browser of this ASUS, you can go customize the app, customize the Wi-Fi name, it's really called an SSID. But essentially you could make your own. You can also use the same one you had previously. So let's just say you had like an older router and you were replacing it with this new one to get more distance, faster speeds and stuff. Then you could technically use the same SSID and password, and in most cases, not all cases, but in most cases, all your devices will automatically connect to this one and you won't need to do anything. In fact, that's what I do. I review so many mesh Wi-Fi and router videos. I pretty much use the same name, same SSID and same password, and as a result, I think in pretty much all the cases, maybe except one case, but pretty much in almost all the cases, all my devices automatically connect to it. Okay, so in that case, Wi-Fi devices connects to this, you're good to go, and you have your Ethernet ports here, and you're good to go. However, if you have more Ethernet ports and you want to hook up more Ethernet devices, well, all you really have to do is connect to any one of these three, it does not matter. So any one of the three LAN ports, like let's just say I want to pick LAN 3, connect it to this, and then get an unmanaged switch, and then there are different sizes, so you could get a 4 port, an 8 port, a 16 port, a 24 port. There are a lot of port options. But in this case, I have 2 8 ports right now, and you hook it up to your unmanaged switch, and it does not matter which port you connect it to. It's plug and play. Literally, you just plug this into the power, and you plug an Ethernet port, and it will figure everything out. You're good to go. So, but when I'm connecting it, I typically connect it either to the last one or to the first one, just so I kind of remember, like, oh yeah, that's my router. So, but again, it really doesn't matter which one you connect it to. Now, if you need more ports, well, the cool thing is you can hook up a switch and pick any port you want, does not matter. And the same thing is here, pick any port you want, and it does not matter. And so now, so essentially, if we were here, if we got an 8 port switch, we would have 7 usable ports because one of them needs to give network access. So if we got a 16 port, we would have 15 ports usable because one of them would need to give network access. So in this case, if I'm going from switch to switch, well, now this has 6 other usable ones, and now this has 7, and the same thing is true. You know, plug it into any port you want, does not matter. Now, one thing that's very important to note is, in the case of an unmanaged switch, notice I have a Netgear here, and I have a D-Link here. Well, when you get an unmanaged switch, it does not matter the brand name. So I can get a Netgear, mix it up with ASUS, and it's totally fine. No issues. I can get a Netgear, hook it up with a D-Link or something else like a TP-Link. No issues whatsoever. So, but in the case of a router, it does actually matter which one you connect to what. So in the case of this ASUS, it's compatible with anything that supports AI mesh, which is really any other ASUS router. Not all the ASUS routers have AI mesh, but a lot of the newer ones do. Now I'm going to skip option number 2 is because in option 2, I usually connect a router with a dedicated non-router. So in this case, both of these are routers, so I'm just going to skip to option number 3. So option number 3 is called wired backhaul. And notice I'm just going to add on to this. So, and you don't, if you don't want to use that many switches, that's totally fine. But option number 3 is called wired backhaul or Ethernet backhaul. So what that means is that this guy, the main router, is hooked up to the secondary router via Ethernet. Now, let's take a Ethernet cable, hook this up. So, pick any LAN port I want, does not matter, and then plug it in to the WAN port on the ASUS ET8. So in this case, you want to tell this guy that, oh, I'm giving you internet access, so hook it up to the WAN port for this one, because technically this router now has internet access from the modem, and when you're trying to give it to this guy, you hook it up to the WAN port. Okay, so in this case, this becomes a wired backhaul or Ethernet backhaul, and now when you have Wi-Fi devices, let's say this is 2 or 3 or 4 rooms or 5 rooms away, when you take your Wi-Fi device, you're closer to this one, it'll switch you to this one. If you're closer to this one, it'll switch you to this one. So all of that happens automatically. That's one of the beauties of a mesh Wi-Fi. It's really a Wi-Fi dead zone killer, and it just makes life easy for Wi-Fi devices. You can also expand stuff from this other one too. So with these LAN ports, let's say you have a computer you want to hook up. Well, you can pretty much hook up that computer from any of these ports. So you can hook it up from this guy, you can hook it up from this guy, you can hook it up from the unmanaged switches, that's totally fine. Now, if you're wondering, okay, well, can I go from the switch to the other ET8? And the answer is yes, you can. So instead of going directly from this ET8 to this guy, if this ET8 has gone to a switch, in the case of this white cable, all you would need to do is pick any port you want on this unmanaged switch. Again, any port you want, does not matter, and connect it. But on this side, it would need to be connected to the WAN port on the ET8 specifically. So in this case, it's still considered wired backhaul. In fact, you can even connect this guy from another switch. So you can go from router to switch, then back to the other ET8, which is no longer acting as a router, rather it's acting as a node on the same network. So this is called wired backhaul. Now, a common question I get asked is, can I go from modem to switch and then from the switch to all the other routers? And the answer is no. So what you want to do is the modem needs to go to the router first. After the router, then you can pick any combination you want. So you could go from ET8 to this ET8, then to these two switches, or then to one switch, or you could connect one switch to this guy, and then this other ET8, you could connect to the other switch. That's all fine, so as long as the router is connected to the modem first. There needs to be a direct Ethernet connection between these. Really, the main advantage on wired backhaul is on the secondary node, you're going to get very good speeds, consistent and very fast. Now moving on to wireless backhaul. So wireless backhaul is essentially the same as wired backhaul, except there is no Ethernet connection between them. So the way this works is this now wirelessly talks to this guy, and it's still on the same network. So you can still take your phone. When you're closer to this guy, it'll connect here. If you're closer to this guy, it'll connect here, and it'll be fine. However, because it's on wireless backhaul, it will probably suffer some speeds. I mean, technically this is a tri-band system, and it honestly has very good wireless backhaul speeds. So in some cases, you might not even lose any speeds depending on how fast your internet is or how fast your network access is that you're trying to access something else. But typically, wireless backhaul is not quite as good as wired backhaul. It just so happens that this is actually a pretty good system even for wireless backhaul. Okay, but for wireless backhaul, you pretty much have the same network, except now you can pretty much just go 2 rooms away, 1 or 2 rooms away, and connect this to the power, and you're good to go. It will automatically connect to this one. It will automatically create the network. Now, another common question I get asked is, well, can I use the Ethernet ports on this one if this is wirelessly talking to this guy? And the answer is yes. So if you have, let's just say, an Xbox or whatever, or a computer you want to connect to via Ethernet, well, just hook it up to one of these LAN ports, and you should be good to go. So, and then hook up the other end to your Xbox, and you're done. You can also even hook up a switch here. So if you needed more ports on the other side, you can technically, these will wirelessly talk to each other, and then you can have an unmanaged switch here, talking to this guy. So these ports are still working, even though they're on wireless backhaul. And that's pretty much it. That's all the possible ways of connecting the ASUS ET8. If you guys enjoyed this video, smash that subscribe button, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.